Now it's time for our guest of the week on Middle East Matters. Earlier, I went to the Qatari embassy here in the French capital to speak to the country's foreign ministry spokeswoman, Lulwa Rashid Al Khater, about a host of regional issues.
Your Excellency, Lulwa Rashid Al Khater, thank you so much for speaking to us here on Middle East Matters.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to start with the rising tensions in the region. We've heard from your foreign minister, Sheikh Mohammed, saying that talks are being had with both sides, Tehran and Washington, to de-escalate and possibly even mediate.
Yeah, I mean, to be very precise about what His Excellency the Foreign Minister said, he said that we're working with other countries in the region, also with Japan, to de-escalate. And of course, potentially, we're more than happy to play the mediating role if we're asked to do so.
Now, the Trump administration is seemingly open to talks. According to the conversations that you've had with the Iranians, are there any indications that they too will be willing to take to the negotiation table?
We believe that the Iranians are open to discuss and negotiate. Of course, we realize that every party would have their own conditions. There are certain concessions that need to be made from both parties. And it's also our collective responsibility in the region to play a role in that. At the end of the day, let's remember that we are in the region. It's not only between Iran and the US, it's all of us together.
And of course, even though Qatar is opposed to military confrontation, you will be at the heart of it because Qatar hosts the US's biggest military base in the Middle East.
The fact that the region cannot take any more escalations, definitely not a military one, is something that everyone needs to pay very close attention to. Let me give you just one scenario: closing the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the consequences of that will not be only on Qatar, it will be on the entire world.
Your Excellency, I'd like to move on to another source of tension in the region. That's, of course, the two-year standoff now between Qatar and the Saudi-led coalition, this ongoing embargo. Now officials in Doha are saying that it's possible that this is now spilling into other countries, namely Sudan.
Well, we've seen the spillover of that from the very beginning. So June 5th, 2017, a blockade by Saudi, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt was imposed on Qatar. Our own citizens were expelled from these countries, students, people in hospitals. So from that time, we've seen many situations. The situation with the Prime Minister Hariri, to give you an example. The situation in Yemen. And of course, I mean, in Libya, before even Sudan, and of course now in Sudan. So once again, we think that there is a pattern of reckless behavior in our region that needs to stop and needs to be revisited.
Any chance that the Qataris and the Saudis will come to some sort of an agreement in the foreseeable future?
Well, the Kuwaitis are mediating. We very much appreciate that position. It's not only between Qatar and Saudi, it's also the other countries as well, namely United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt. So we have welcomed the mediation. However, we've not seen any positive response from the neighboring blockading countries.
Lastly, and very briefly, I'd like to speak to you about the 2022 World Cup, of course, being hosted by Qatar. FIFA has finally come out to admit a violation of worker standards. Your Excellency, we're talking about a high number of deaths among migrant workers. What steps is Qatar taking to prevent an escalation of this?
We're very serious about preserving the rights of the guest workers in Qatar. We very much appreciate all the efforts they've made with us to develop our country.
Why would you say it's taken so long for Qatar to try and implement these?
No, actually, it's not exactly that. We have already implemented many things. We are ahead of our region when it comes to that. To give you an example, we have abolished the exit permit. What's known as the kafala system has been abolished. Minimum wages have been applied. We have now...
But I think this is the focus on the number of deaths among the migrant workers that's been brought to our attention.
No, I haven't seen any exact numbers that...
An estimate that I had from the International Trade Union Confederation was some 4,000 before the games even start.
I'm not sure about the accuracy of that, to be honest, but my understanding of the situation is that the average of that in Qatar is lower than the global average. As a matter of fact, and as a fruit of those efforts, the ILO has closed the issue against Qatar in November 2017, and we have signed an agreement with them, a 3-year agreement. In accordance to that, Qatar will become a model in the region when it comes to the rights of the migrant workers. So we are very much committed to that.
On that note, Lulwa Rashid Al Khater, the spokesperson for the Foreign Ministry of Qatar, thank you so much for being with us here on Middle East Matters.
Thank you so much. Very glad.